One of the biggest stories of the World Cup was FIFA's decision to suspend a one-match ban for U.S. striker Folarin Balogun. I hope I said that right, ahead of the United States round of 16 match against Belgium. And he had received a straight red card during the U.S. victory over Bosnia and Herzegovina, which ordinarily carries an automatic suspension for the following match. And then Donald Trump publicly acknowledged that he had personally contacted the FIFA president asking FIFA to review the decision because he believed the red card had been unjust. And then FIFA's disciplinary committee announced that under Article 27 of their disciplinary code, it would suspend the automatic one-match suspension for a period of 1 year, making him able to play in the game against Belgium. This is kind of a key point here. They didn't overturn the red card itself, but suspended the punishment. But it immediately generated a bunch of criticism that went well beyond the U.S. The Belgian Football Federation formally challenged the eligibility before kickoff. It was a whole big thing, and their public statement was that their decision had crossed a line, and it's just been total chaos. And I don't know that that's recoverable, because even if there were a full investigation and we determined that the Donald Trump's phone call had not been the basis for overturning the decision, that's still in the zeitgeist. Like, we can't undo that. The thing that I find interesting is that FIFA and everyone else are almost talking about different stories. FIFA's public position has focused almost entirely on process, and then everyone outside of FIFA is talking about political influence and fairness and precedent and institutional independence and general impropriety. And so whether it actually changed the outcome or not may be impossible to prove, but that's kind of beside the point because the narrative had already taken off, right?
Yeah. Part of it is also the American team then had to go into it with a different mindset of like, oh,
Yeah.
you're cheating. You had the rules changed in your favor.
And then lost anyway.
And then lost anyway. Well, yes, but then also maybe that's what led to the loss, right? Where it's like, if you're going into it thinking that everybody hates you because, you got an unfair advantage and you didn't have to play by the rules. The other thing to like think about here is like, this isn't the first time that FIFA has done a similar thing, right? Like, they got rid of Cristiano Ronaldo's like red card so he could participate in the World Cup. You could argue that like, Messi's challenge should have also been a red card. Superstars are treated differently because, there's just like different rules. And I think if you're able to talk about it in that way of like, yes, we know it's unfair, but there are also like special rules for the superstars like Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi. And Balogun falls under this, not for himself necessarily, but because USA is like a host country trying to like get into that narrative of like, we're trying to make it seem as legit as possible. So it just ends up, putting a whole bunch of like controversy on everybody. So the stink gets on everybody, right?
Yeah, the reputational damage is already done, and that rubs off on sponsors and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah.
Professional sports leagues, to your point about the wedding as well, they're operating like consumer brands that like every governance decision now gets analyzed through social media, through sponsor expectations, political reactions, international press, and fan communities. And it's just a different environment now. And FIFA is, as you've pointed out, no stranger to these controversies, and they end up becoming sponsor issues. Like their relationships with Visa and Coca-Cola and Adidas have become public voices during some of their corruption scandals, and sponsors don't want to become part of their governance controversies, but they also invest enormous sums in the credibility of the tournament,
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think that it'll affect much in the future. Just because, FIFA has kind of done this before. They've been in many controversies. How they're picking countries to be like, host countries, it has always had controversy, right? With Russia, with Qatar. They had to change, remember, the Qatar tournament to be during the winter instead of the summer when all, tournaments usually happen, because you can't be playing in 120-degree weather in the middle of a desert, right? And so there was that whole, controversy about like, doing it purely because you wanted to host it in Qatar and knowing that there was so much money trading hands that, that was the reason. So the fact that they've done this with, other players and then now with, America, I mean, you can even bring up the fact that they have allowed, hydration breaks because,
Yeah.
American
Mhm.
companies and, the host, Fox, wanted to have commercial breaks in between. So they created this quarter system basically for America, right? And now the question is, will that continue going forward or will it not, for this next one that's going to be hosted in Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, right? And then the other one that's like coming up, that I've heard like, people talk about is what's going to happen with 2038 because FIFA has done this like, rigmarole basically of how they're choosing hosts, host countries
Mhm.
to basically make it so that America is the only the only country that's possible to host it based on like their own rules of like similar regions not being able to host it one after the other, right?
Mhm.
So it's pretty much certain that America is gonna, host in 2038 again, which is great for us, but may also bring up these allegations of like how fair the system really is. And whether the rules are meant to be, sidestepped for, particular situations that, call for it. I mean, I was of the mind that like it benefits us, so just take it, like don't feel bad about it because like it had nothing to do with Balogun, had nothing to do with like the US men's national team. They weren't the ones that were out there like, putting that forward. Even if you believe that Trump was involved, FIFA wanted to own it as if they decided to do it all by themselves. If it was a thing where like the players felt like badly that like it shouldn't have been a thing that was given to them, and then that affected their performance in the game, like that's the thing that like annoys me the most because it's like it had
Yeah.
nothing to do with you guys. I kind of compared it to Maradona's Hand of God, right? Where it's like it happened, it benefited them. You kind of take it, you take ownership, and then move on from it. It's still
Mhm.
controversial, obviously. Like this thing, I think it'll be controversial forever. But it's
Mhm.
like it's not really a thing you can apologize for,
Right.
because it
It's
had
a
nothing
it's
to
an issue.
do
It's
do
an
with
issue
us.
for FIFA as a brand, not the US
Exactly.
sports team. Though it in the minds of people watching it, it kind of it continues to color the United States reputation as a
Mhm.
whole.
But is that not our reputation anyway?
Yeah, right.
So yeah.
So, FIFA has this consistent communication style. Looking back over the past decade, what struck me weren't these controversies themselves. It's how similar FIFA's responses have been.
Mhm.
Whether the issue is corruption or Qatar or Balogun, then FIFA almost always defaults to this institutional language. It talks about procedures and governance and committees and regulations and disciplinary codes. And that's understandable. Governing bodies govern the rules,
Mhm.
but the public discussion almost always centers on fairness and legitimacy and politics and values and trust. And those are reputational challenges that they have yet to resolve. The story also moved categories almost instantaneously. Like it for about an hour, it looked like a refereeing story, but then it became a governance story, and now it's a
Mhm.
comms story and a reputational story. And it's a useful reminder that organizations don't always get to decide what kind of crisis they're managing, for
Mhm.
example. And then the public is the one that decides that. And then the biggest communication challenges may be precedent. This would probably be the question that I'd be asking if I were covering FIFA. If this Article 27 allows this outcome, under what circumstances should people expect it to be used? Is this extraordinary, rare, routine? Will it happen again? And whenever an organization makes an exception, audiences immediately want to know whether they're looking at a new precedent or a unique case. And so do all of the brands that come with it, right? So I think that's where FIFA still has some explaining to do.
Yeah, I doubt that they will. I think this is just a one and done and a card that they now have in their pocket to pull out whenever it benefits them. One of the lessons for me is that once you confirm the intervention, issuing an independent statement doesn't repair the contradiction, right?
Right.
It creates a new one, and that's basically what we saw here. The sequence matters as much as the words. I
Mhm.
think one of the things that they should have realized is that whether or not Trump was involved or was informed, he was going to take credit for it. He has done this across all issues that he has, been involved with. So if they were gonna involve him, or if they knew if that call was real, they should have counted on it. And they should have
Mhm.
then, worked their statement around that, knowing that he was gonna, say this, because of course he is. And I think that was one of the problems with me of like how they reacted to this, is not taking that into consideration, because then they added a whole bunch more like fuel to the fire of like it becoming more a political thing versus a like process thing for the game itself. Um,
Mhm.
and that would have cleared things up both for them, but then also for the team, and then, for Trump himself. So that's something that it's like, if you're going to have, a situation and you want to try to control it as much as possible, you have to think about all the factors that may affect how people feel about it, regardless of what you think you want to happen. And that's kind of what happened here. And then another lesson is that precedent is product. The moment that FIFA opened the review, every other red card appeal was going to be inevitable. So
Mhm.
these decisions aren't obviously going to be able to scale in isolation. So, much to what you were saying, deciding how that's going to be a thing going forward, is a thing. Even if it means coming out and saying, this is a one-off thing, we're never doing it again, because of everything that like of everything that came from it, from then, instead of just allowing this like gray area to continue existing, for the duration of this World Cup, but then also World Cups in the future.
It's all more algae for the reflecting pool.
I know, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, I think this is the first time, especially because it is taking place in America, that I think the conversation revolved around it a lot more, right? I
Oh,
think they
certainly.
were used to the way that things kind of happen in Qatar, where it's like you kind of complain about it, but then it kind of dies off because, like, there isn't that much attention being paid to it, because it's, soccer. The American audience just doesn't really listen to it. The fact that it is in America, it involved the American team. It was like a thing that like had never really happened before. Just through all these like elements, made it so that like it took over the conversation. And that's, why like it became such a like maelstrom storm for like everybody.
You made me think of the notion. I get the niggling feeling that FIFA has kind of in this World Cup alienated a lot of its European fans because
Mm.
they can't watch the games unless they're willing to watch at 1 a.m.
Mhm.
and that that's kind of rough. And
Mhm.
then I've heard a lot of my British friends, for example, complaining about these water breaks and commercial breaks,
Mhm.
and they definitely don't feel as excited as they have about past World Cups.
Yeah, that fits into the narrative of like what I'm seeing on Twitter, where it's like
Yeah.
the English fans are not happy, but then all the rest of the European teams had been like fine, or like fans have been fine, right? And that's kind of also showed up in how they're, celebrating in like America and everything. So I do think that this helped push other Europeans like into like more of the negative side of things,
Mhm.
because they're like, oh well, now, like, America's getting favoritism, for a sport that they don't even like, for God's sake,
Right.
um
Yeah, the
so yeah.
travelers on social media are adorable, don't get me wrong there, but, some of the other aspects of it have been a little bit challenging for them on the reputational front.